Ooh, you made it. Fantastic. I hope you watch part one. If you're skipping to part two, you're going to miss a lot of good stuff. Don't miss the good stuff. Start at part one on this series. If you haven't clicked on to part one, again, this is Petri. Go to part one of this series. Check that out first. Watch it full through. You'll see all the details on how we get to this part of the painting, which is we're almost completed. We just have a few more little details here to wrap up on this painting, and we'll be, it's 100% completed. This is a composition where we're practicing more or less. So let's think of our watercolor drawing and painting as a lot of practice. We're always practicing, doing small comps like this. Once in a while, we might have a show come up, or someone might ask for some paintings, or to do a painting. Many times over my years now, people ask me to do a painting for them, or for a friend, or something like that, so on and so forth. So that's great. When that happens, you have to kind of get a little more focused and find out what the person wants in their painting, what size is it, and then you have to do a little more prep work. You have to maybe draw the painting a few times first to get comfortable with it, and then you do your finished painting. And then, or if it's for a show, like a gallery show, or something of that nature, then you might be practicing and then getting into a series of paintings where you might paint like a dozen still lifes, and maybe like a dozen boat pictures, or seascapes, and then maybe a dozen landscapes, whatever your favorite subjects are that you like to paint. So you would come up with a number of paintings, and you would just keep going and paint each one as you go, and the ones that come out the best, you would keep those and put mats on them and frame them for a show, let's say. So, or if you're going to sell them, perhaps if you're going to have a small a yard sale or something where you put in some paintings to sell. So as an artist, but in essence, we're always practicing. That's the thing. The smaller comps, practice all different sizes if you can. But in essence here, we're doing a small comp. We set up across from us, and in part one, if you go back to part one, you'll see how we set everything up to get this achieved here, this painting. And if we look, we're close to finish. We need to do a couple final details here. We had a still life set up across from us, and I did this one probably yesterday. So I did this one the day before we're doing this video now. I did this one yesterday, as well as this. So again, I was practicing and getting familiar with the subject. So here you can see, this was my first one I did. More loose, having fun, and I wasn't really like, I just more quickly did this one to kind of get a rough idea of the subject I had set up, the still life. Then this one here, this came out a little better, I think. More interesting, a little more, I was more careful with this one, did more thought on how I was going to lay out some of the lines on the tablecloth, and I have a little more interesting splashes and some shadowing and things, I think, than the first one. And now we are just finishing up this painting. So here I'm thinking we're going to need a little bit of shadowing under the paintbrush, so let's do that. So we're going to work on, we'll use our spritzer bottle and some paper towel. So after a while, after 15 or 20 minutes, or around there, we clean up our palette a bit. This way we can get some fresh, clean color out. And here again, we're just kind of wrapping up our painting here, doing the final details. So we're going to do a nice shadow underneath the paintbrush. I'll use some cobalt blue and some raw sienna maybe mixed with that, just a little bit. that'll lighten up actually. So we always remember when we're doing watercolors, the paint will always dry lighter than what it looks like when it goes onto the paper. So that's going to lighten up a little bit, and that'll look probably just about right for the shadow. And I'm going to add a little more red, alizarin crimson and cadmium red. To our apple up above here. And I'll take a little bit of that cobalt blue. A bit of a shadow where the by the core of the apple, and then I'll maybe use a little burnt umber, burnt sienna, burnt umber, and maybe a little bit of sap green. And I'll just make a stem here. And I added a little bit of more cadmium lemon yellow here and some cobalt blue for some shadowing. That's about good there. Okay, and I'm looking back and forth at my still I've set up here, and I'm going to put a little bit of sap green and French ultramarine blue. Now if you can get this done in the first time with maybe some of these darker tonal values, that's good. Sometimes you can go back in and add a little bit of a darker tonal value here and there, but if you can get it usually looks fresher and more it looks just better, I think, when we try to get our tonal values correct on that first alla prima pass with our each fruit that we're drawing here. So if you can get those darks and lights and try to get them all to go back in now and start trying to add shadows and things, it's not going to look so good. So that's definitely a goal to try to always keep in mind if you can. Does that make sense? To try to get everything as close as you can to correct with light and shadow on your subject matter as you're doing it, like the first pass, because this is pretty much alla prima painting, so we're just going to do it in one go, and that winds up being the finished product. Although you can sometimes go in and do a couple touch-ups, I wouldn't advise doing a lot. So here I am going to do a little more touch-up here. I'm going to do just a couple spots where I see some shadows. And see here, that's where doing it alla prima is a lot. So now I really can't, since the paper is wet, I really can't go in and do much more. And I think that's good. So here we kind of just noticed we went back in and just did a few a few adjustments here. We just added a little bit of paint. So I added some, this is raw sienna and a little bit of cobalt blue. We did the shadow under the brush. I'm going to take some French ultramarine blue, burnt umber, and I'll do the top of the brush. Maybe I'll go with a little cerulean blue, just a tiny bit. Just in that brush area a little bit. A couple, splashes of paint. There's a little bit of a shadow. Cobalt blue with a little bit of the burnt umber. And then sometimes these shadows behind, like say behind the birdhouse here, this really looks good. And there is a few shadows in the tablecloth. So we can really have fun here toward the final phases of the painting, just to capture a few like ripples in the napkin here that we have, tablecloth, to give it some more feeling of three-dimensionality. And I think that's about it. So this is fantastic. A nice composition of still life with some fruits, a paintbrush, a birdhouse. Things look really good here. Too much more, if we try to do too much more details on this, or work too much more on this, then it would kind of start to look like it's got too many details. So we sometimes want to leave things a little bit underfinished, which looks better in a sense. And then we can peel off our tape. That gives it a nice finished look too. If you want to have just some paper with our tape, and it kind of just makes a nice border. And of course we can put a nice mat over the top. But that frames it out nicely with some good artist tape. I hope you enjoyed this, everyone. Thanks again for coming by, painting along with me. I want to just say I appreciate everyone's comments and all the encouragement everyone gives me in my comment section, thanking me for my work and for doing a good job, and coming onto YouTube here and making videos. I can't wait. I'm going to be continuing to paint and having a great time here. I hope everyone that's newer here to my channel, you'll keep coming back and enjoying the painting that we do and the drawing. And if you have any special requests, please put them in the comment section. Just you might have a special subject you want me to cover, or an issue that you might have with your painting, you want to have it covered in more detail. That's fine. That's why I'm here. I'm here for everyone that's painting, to try to be a help if at all possible. I don't know everything about watercolor, but there's a lot of other great artists out there online as well that are painting and doing a great job. And so maybe I do certain things differently that you might want to learn about, in addition to what you're already learning from other artists. In any case, I'm just all for learning as much as you can. The more tools you have in your toolbox when you're a watercolor artist, you'll just have so much more fun painting because you'll have more things to draw from. As far as when you're doing your work, you can remember back and say, I learned this, let me use this here. I learned that from over with this person, I can use that there. Next thing you know, you have all these tools and skills that you picked up along the way from all different artists, and you can apply them to your work. So again, thanks for watching. Hit the like button if you like the video series here, our two-part series on the still life, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.